Oh my god, this bed is so squeaky. Today I'm going to be doing a video about interview tips because you might be an upcoming graduate, you might be looking for jobs, and someone on one of my videos requested I do an interviews advice video, so this is the video. I hope you like it. Please like and subscribe if you want to, and let's get started. No real plan, as someone only suggested this video to me like yesterday, and I've been just busy and stuff. So I start my new job on Monday. Probably when you're watching this, I would have started my job, because basically tomorrow I'm seeing Sam Fender. Today is Thursday, the day before, so I'm not sure which video is going to go up first, but basically when this video goes up I would have started my new job, which is a bit scary. But I've had a lot of interviews over the past few weeks, so I'm going to share my wisdom. Number one, when you've got the interview secured, you've got it booked in, I might split this into online interviews versus in person. So let's do online interviews first, because I've done more of those. An online interview, I think, just general interview tips, I think always research what the company does, what are they selling, what are their goals, and what's their ethos. You can always find some in their about section on their website, and I think it's really important as well to just look at their news or blog. Interviews always get really impressed if you say, oh, I found this on your blog, and you ask a question about it. So yeah, basic interview tips, always look at their website about what they do. Just really familiarise yourself with the company, when it was founded, who founded it, what they want to achieve in the future. Just really familiarise yourself with all those sort of basic terms. When it comes to the actual online interview, what I think is one of the best things about online interviews is they can't see your notes. So what I always did is I'd have my camera propped up on my laptop, and then I'd have all my notes behind the camera. So when you were looking at notes, it looked like you were looking at the camera, but you were actually looking at notes behind you. So smart tip there. Also, it's really important to still dress smart on an online interview. So wear a plain blouse, a nice shirt, and it just gives a really good impression. It doesn't matter what you're wearing underneath, because they can't see that, but just because it's an at-home interview, just make sure you're wearing smart interview clothing. To look at the camera, not at the screen. Can you see, if I look at my phone, it doesn't look like I'm talking to you. If I look directly at the camera, I'm talking to you. So that just kind of mimics good eye contact in an interview setting. What else can I suggest for online interviews? Obviously, don't just keep staring at the camera, because I think that's a bit creepy. But yeah, just kind of, if you are aware that you're not looking at the camera, just give it a quick look back. And again, when they're talking to you, just look at the camera, because again, it kind of looks like you're looking at them. So that's another good tip. And also, if you do social media or YouTube, that's a good tip. So I'll always look at the camera. What else can I say for online interviews? So when it comes to interview questions, I've found that for online and in-person interviews, they kind of are the same. Now, I'm talking on experience of applying for office jobs, for admin assistant roles and marketing assistant roles. So obviously, if you're working in a different sector, this might not be helpful, but again, these are quite general questions which do crop up in other places. So one question they normally ask is the typical, why do you want the job? And for this question, I would say, and any interview in general, I would say, make sure you know the job description well, and for each bullet point of the job description, write out an example of how you can do that skill. And if you can't think of an example of doing it, think back to your university days. If it's group work, project work, think of a group project you worked on. Think of volunteering if you haven't done a particular job in that field. But again, if that's something you haven't actually done, don't lie about it, obviously. But I would say, keep that as one of your, maybe don't use that in for that question. But you can use things that you don't know as well, and say, one of my weaknesses is this, but I'm working on it by doing this. So I'm doing an online course in this, or I work on this in my spare time. I actually got this tip from Fairy Job Mother on Instagram. That account is amazing. And also Gradvance, really good interview and CV tips. And also a lot of my advice will probably be coming from the Self-Made Millennial, which is a YouTube channel. So I'll link all these people down below, because that's where I've got most of my advice from. So yeah, when it comes to interviews, just make sure you've got an example for each part of the job description. And I know a lot of people say, oh, you should always use the STAR technique, which is when answering a job interview question, the situation that you used a particular skill in, the task you had to do, A was action, so what you did to achieve that task, and then the result of that. But to be honest, I feel like when you're in an interview, it's really hard to like remember all those like 4 components of a question. So I think, to be honest, if you just give a bit of background context, so say if they asked you, I don't know, demonstrate a time that you worked as part of a team. So again, if you haven't done this in like a work setting, just use university. You could say, for a university project, I worked with a group of 5 people. So that's your context, that's situation bit ticked off. And then for this project, I had to make a 20-page, not spreadsheet, PowerPoint about about this particular topic. My role, and also whenever you're talking about teamwork, always focus on yourself, don't focus on the other team, because obviously they want to see that you can work well on your own as well as part of a team. So always say, I did this to contribute to the teamwork. So as part of the project, I made 5 PowerPoint slides about this. So what I used to say a lot was that in my 3rd year, we had to do, what was it called? Critical discourse analysis. And one of the levels of that is like literacy, like sort of literacy analysis. So I did English at A-level, so I was like, you know what, I'm good at analysing words. So I'd always say, when I had to so I used one of my strengths to do that part of the analysis. And as a result, we got a first in that project. So it's quite simple when you break it down, but I know it's quite hard to remember like the 4 different parts of STAR. So I think as long as you mention just a brief context, what you had to do and what you achieved, you should be okay on those questions. Another common question is, what are your weaknesses? Now, I did touch on this a minute ago, but it's quite easy. I think you can attack this in 2 ways. You can either describe a weakness which isn't really relevant to the job. So for example, you could say, one of my weaknesses is public speaking, when you're going for a job that's not really customer facing, because you're not probably going to do much public speaking in that role. And then you could say, to combat this, I've started a YouTube channel, or I'm working on giving speeches to small groups of people. Like, to be honest, I'm probably not going to check you do these things. So I think things like that, you can kind of twist it a little bit. Or if you do want to choose something that is more related to the job, so again, if it's a customer facing role and you say, I'm not very confident on the phone, you can really just be passionate and say, I'm not very confident on speaking on the phone yet, but I would like to improve my skills by receiving good quality training from this job, but also in my spare time, I'm taking more responsibility by making my own phone calls at home. Something like that. It doesn't have to be really long-winded, just straight to the point, because if you think about interviews, they're very similar to sort of like doing a test. So, and when examiners mark it, they just want to tick things off. So one question I got recently is that I'm applying for like admin sort of customer facing roles. So one of the questions I got asked was, God, I can't remember what it was now. Like, what do you think is key to this role? And I said good communication, because I know in my experience, when I was at uni, I was like, when I had a problem, I was just kind of passed from person to person. It wasn't really dealt with properly. And she literally said, you hit the nail on the head. That's exactly the answer we were looking for. So yeah, just be very specific with your answers, but just quick to the point. Like, no one wants to hear you rambling for ages. So yeah. And I think another good thing to do in interviews is kind of make it more personal to you. Like, it just makes it come across more genuine. So I've been really honest and spoken about me dropping out of university and how that's affected me professionally and personally. And like, I think a lot of employers kind of commend that, because it shows more of my personality. It shows that I don't really stand up for things I don't believe in. So yeah, I think when it's appropriate, do reference things personal to your life and just make it more relevant to the job role, and hopefully that'll help. In-person interviews. So I think in-person interviews can be so much more nerve-wracking, because you can't put your notes behind you. There's 1 or 2 people just looking straight at you. But yeah, let's go with what to wear. So again, obviously with online interviews, I said make sure you wear a nice blouse, but I think if you can, get yourself a really nice suit that you feel confident in, because for my first in-person interview, I hadn't done an in-person interview in like 2 or 3 years, so it was so nerve-wracking, and I had like no office clothes, so I had to wear my mum's clothes. So already they weren't my clothes, they were too big for me. I just did not feel good. So so yeah, I just felt a bit uncomfortable. So if you can, you don't have to spend a fortune. I did spend some money on interview clothes recently. I'll link that video down below, but you can get a lot of stuff secondhand nowadays, because a lot of people are converting to at home working, so they're selling suits and stuff. But I got a like three-piece suit from Next, which I know fits me well, it'll last me well. So yeah, now I've got that suit, I just felt way more confident going into an interview wearing that because it was my own clothes, I knew they fitted me. And yeah, it's just something I preferred to wear. So yeah, make sure you've got your outfit sorted, lay it out for the day before the interview so you know what you're wearing on the day, you don't have to rush around and stress. So yeah, that's the clothing aspect. Again, when you go, I'd always say arrive early. It's better to be early than late. So I always arrived around like 5 minutes before the interview. Even for like online interviews, I'd always wait in the waiting room for like 5 minutes before. So yeah, always be really friendly to the people on reception. I think it gives a good impression. Just be like, how was your day? That kind of thing. Yeah, and then so obviously sit and wait. And then when you obviously meet the person interviewing you, say hello. Sometimes they might shake your hand, sometimes they don't. Obviously with COVID, you're not really sure. So I always kind of wait for them to initiate the handshake. Yeah, and as I said, just be really welcoming. Say thank you so much for having me, that kind of thing. And again, I think it's really important to keep eye contact. So again, don't constantly stare at them, but just always like when you're answering a question, just look at them in the eye or in between their eyes. I think that's slightly less daunting than just looking straight in their eyes. Just look at the bridge of their nose. I always find that helps. And again, like don't be put off as well. Like I find this more with like in-person interviews. I usually make notes, but making notes isn't a bad thing. So they're probably just trying to keep recording your answers. And I think as well, it's really important in interviews. It is important that the company likes you, but it's equally, if not more important, that you like the company. So if you're sitting in an interview thinking these people don't seem very friendly, or this job isn't what was described on the website, it's completely okay for you to reject the offer or reject the interview after you've had it. It's all experience. Like I've had quite a few interviews where when they explained it to me in person, I was like, this is not what I signed up for or envisaged in my job that I want. So yeah, it's completely okay if you're sitting in an interview like, oh my god, this is not for me. Like I think that happens more often than not. I do think interviews are very similar to like dating. Like you do just figure out as you go along like what works best for you, what you want in a job, what you don't want in a job. So yeah, I think make judgments yourself as well as them judging you, sort of thing. In-person interviews, ask them questions. I think again, just so you can understand the company. It's so important that you ask a question as well at the end or two. So one of my, I think some easy questions you can apply to a lot of different sectors is like how did COVID affect your company or affect the job role? You can also say, this one is from Self-Made Millennial. She said, rather than asking, oh, how has this job become open? You can ask them or rather than saying what was the reason why the last person left, you can say, is this a new job opening? Or like it just kind of opens up the conversation without sort of harassing them as to why this job is new. So yeah, I would always ask, is this a new job opening, or have you had this, what has the other person gone on to do after this role? I think that's quite an important question because that shows like if there's career progression in the company. So yeah, I've got jobs from asking how COVID affected the business, asking if it's a new position, and what was the other question? I think it's quite a good one. Oh, where do you see the business in 5 years? Again, I think it just shows that you're interested to know more about them. It gives them sort of a chance to talk about business, and also what is your proudest achievement. I think especially if you're talking like a managing director or someone like that, asking them what their proudest achievement gives them an opportunity to like go on about the company that they love. And yeah, it just shows if they're passionate about it. And another interview technique I've learned as well is to ask them how they would describe the day-to-day of the job, because that is when you can pick up any red flags. So when I've been going for interviews before, there was one time where a woman said to me, it is a demanding and boring job. So as soon as she said that, I was like, why would I want to work somewhere like that? Do you know what I mean? So after that interview, I rang up the recruiter. I'm like, I'm really sorry, this is not the job for me. And that is completely okay. I also had another place saying, oh, you would have to work till 8 p.m. Once a week, at least once a week. I was like, nope, I value work-life balance. So again, I'd never heard from them again anyway, but yeah. So I think it's really important to ask them what the day-to-day of the job is like. You're completely in your rights to ask about that. I've been told to avoid asking about holiday entitlement because again, it just shows that kind of gives the impression that you're only there for like money. So avoid that holiday and salary questions, especially for a first interview. You can ask those sort of later down the line when you've got a job offer. This video helped. Again, sorry there wasn't much structure to it, but I just wanted to say to any graduates out there, keep going. I was doing 2 to 3 job applications a day when I was searching for jobs, and I found something eventually. And I think as as each interview goes along, you just kind of get more confident in yourself and kind of know how to approach these answers. But definitely my best 3 tips would be get the job description up and write down any examples of doing each thing in that job description. And if you don't have that, think of a way to train yourself to do it. Ask the company questions, so ask them if it's a new role, so you can kind of gauge what the situation is at that company. You can also distinguish if there's like high turnover rates. Again, might be a red flag if people leave the job quite a lot. And again, keeping good eye contact, just be friendly. Again, they are normal people at the end of the day, so the interviews kind of help them see personality and character. So yeah, just make a light-hearted jokes, obviously nothing inappropriate or like controversial, but if you can make a joke out of the situation, I think that's quite a nice thing to do and just puts everyone at ease, really. So yeah, again, I hope you found this video helpful. Good luck if you're trying to find a job. Thank you so much for all the support recently, and I will see you soon. Bye.